It is now time for your Fashion Forward with Heather Newberger. And you may have noticed there's a company out there that went from real cringe to actually pretty cute. We are talking about Abercrombie. Heather, we have so many thoughts, so I'm so glad you're here.
So many thoughts. I don't even know where to begin.
Yeah, well, we're going to start really with the shift. We just have to talk about, before we do that, the teen trauma that almost all of us have that we've associated with Abercrombie. So we have to start with the original brand model from the 2000s.
Well, I think it's really important when we're talking about Abercrombie to really look at the early aughts and say, like, these were the things that were in style. Like, it was low rise. It was things that were like very like midriff bearing. I think a lot of the pieces that were out there were what I like to think of as extremely oppressive to women, because they really highlighted pieces on their bodies that were just not the most flattering things. You know, a high waist, when we talk about that now, that's really just a woman's natural waist. So what we were looking at back in the early aughts was Abercrombie really monopolizing on these trends and really pushing for like the lowest rise possible, the smallest shirt possible. And you had principals in schools telling girls they couldn't wear Abercrombie because it was inappropriate, yet it was also this huge status symbol. If you could afford to wear Abercrombie and Fitch clothing, if you saw that little moose on someone's lapel, man or woman, it meant everything. And I think that's really interesting, again, when we're looking at just sort of the time frame and what that really means, because a lot of the clothes that they would share and sell in their advertisements didn't even reflect the clothing that were, or the garments that were in their stores. Plus, a lot of the quote unquote models were actually just teens standing outside the store spraying perfume.
Just a wild time. And also, you're right, their clothes, when you're a teenager, you thought that that's how they should fit on the most unrealistic person, especially compared to the average teenager out there. So with that said, all of that cringeworthy stuff, the new CEO has taken over in 2017 and wants that brand to take a really hard pivot. She says she wants to focus on releasing clothes that, quote, reflective of the world that is around us. Now I have to ask you, what are they actually doing to do that? And where are we going to see those changes?
So I'm going to have to reference my notes for this one because I was so surprised to see so many changes that they felt like they wanted to move towards. Really, frankly, just turning the brand on its head. So they're doing a lot of interesting campaign work. We're talking about really including inclusivity in the new campaign imagery. If you were to compare the old campaign imagery to what we're seeing now, it's using all different types of faces, different body sizes, different, looks, genders, ethnicities, et cetera, really trying to like remind us that Abercrombie is now inclusive. It's no longer just for white people who are, a size 0. They're also looking at doing things for gender inclusivity, as well as the campaign you see here, which they're calling their Justice for Growth campaign that they brought out during Black History Month. For 2021, they actually did a Pride collection that was really interesting, just sort of to celebrate the LGBTQIA plus community, which I think is, again, very different than the Abercrombie of yore. And they're also pledging to do more, sustainable practices, such as reducing water usage. But I think the thing that's really coming out and we're seeing the most, and actually Natalie and I have kind of discussed on the sly, is that the jeans are really changing. The way that they're looking at denim. Denim specifically, having been such a pressure point for them earlier with low rise, now we're talking about high rise jeans. We're talking about the quote unquote mom style, dad style, wide leggings, things that are just flattering. And personally, I'm a big fan of rigid denim, and they're offering that as well.
It's like you're mad, but you're happy at the same time. It's a weird place to be, Heather.
It's a super weird place to be, and I am excited, and yet I feel very tenuous about the whole situation because, again, as we were talking earlier, yes, it's great to see all these different new options being offered out there for women, but how much are we really trying to push this pivot? I mean, my goodness, it feels like an entirely new brand. It feels very made well. It feels, kind of a little an offshoot of maybe J. Crew or even Reformation. Is that the Abercrombie and Fitch that we remember? I don't know. And do I want it? I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, one of the things that we were just talking about is this confusion. I saw a tweet the other day, and it said that millennials just can't ignore this. Abercrombie owes all of us an apology. And I ask you right now, because a lot of brands are making changes, is this one for them? Because it was so iconic the way they were. Is this too little too late?
It's hard to answer that question. A little too late? Well, absolutely. If we're talking about really healing our teenage trauma, my gosh, every single millennial went through this experience, whether you're a woman or a man, looking at these ads and just feeling like you are excluded from the conversation. And that's really what Abercrombie's advertising and sort of their messaging was all about, saying, you can't come to the club with us. Whereas now they're like, look at all these different options, look at all this sort of like inclusive imagery. And again, that's great. But yeah, I kind of would like an apology for all the PTSD I suffered.
I think we all would. Now, with that said, as consumers, what is our responsibility here?
Again, it's a tough question because I think when we're talking about responsibility as consumers, we really want to make sure that we're putting our money where our mouths are. So yeah, it really is important to look at sustainable practices, shopping vintage, all these different things we've talked about in terms of really reducing your footprint. At the same time, you do love fit. You love fit, I love fit. Everyone loves fit. Who doesn't want to look great in a good pair of jeans or a top? So I'm not necessarily the person who's going to stand in your way if something looks great on your body and feels great on your body. I'll be honest and say I was checking out their website and I saw a pair of jeans that I liked and I bought them. And I can't believe that I bought them. And I feel ashamed that I bought them in some ways too, because whereas they look flattering, at the same time, I'm giving my money to a company that really did so much harm for so many years. Yes, the is important, but it feels a little late.
Yeah, you know what? But I cannot believe I'm saying this, Heather. Everybody deserves a second chance. So we're going to give Abercrombie that second chance right now. Now, it's thin ice, but we're still going to give it to them because all of us are a little still upset about that. All right, Heather Newberger, thank you so much for joining us. You guys, make sure you follow her on Instagram at Heather Newberger and pick up her book, How to Date Your Wardrobe. We'll see you next week.